everyone, I'm Lizette, and joining me today is Christine Ferraris from Ferraris Law. That is our lead attorney. So, welcome, and we're discussing a very important topic today. It's like what happens to warranties when, like, a business closes. What happens to your warranties, your refunds, and all those kind of things. So let's dive in. Christine, if a business closes, and they sell us a product with a warranty, what happens? What can the consumer still claim the warranty after the business closes or shuts down?
Yeah, so that's a pretty broad, so I'm going to kind of answer it in pieces. So knowing what your warranty does and doesn't do is always key. And so getting a copy of it before you purchase, I always tell customers, they see 10-year warranty, they just presume it's 10 years for everything, you really need to know exactly what that warranty covers, because often it might cover parts or certain parts like reconditioned parts, not the same part, but maybe a remanufactured part, which means like kind of a used part that's been redone. What you see with a lot of times with insurance covered auto repairs. So you want to make sure you understand the warranty. So always review the warranty that you're prior to purchase, because that's the idea of it. Like, you want to shop around because that's really material to whatever decision you make. So, and then maybe even asking the question, and sometimes in the warranty itself, it will say, who's responsible for that warranty. It may not be the business. It may be some third-party administrator. It may not be the seller. So understanding those things when you're purchasing a product of any kind that has a warranty, anything from a boat to a plane to a refrigerator. They're especially important for things that operate like air conditioning units that have mechanical operations, and cars and so forth. But our refrigerator is pretty important to us. And here in Arizona, air conditioning is hugely important. And if that goes and you don't have a warranty that you can rely on, it can be really a big mess for you. I mean, you can literally not live in your house. So warranties are hugely important. So you should pay close attention to them when you're considering purchasing a product.
Okay. And then my next question is, so what should a consumer look for before buying a warranty?
Well, I guess what's important to you? Is it important to you that that it's a long period of time, or is it? I mean, it depends on the product, right? I mean, what do you expect? Do you expect to have a 20-year warranty for a refrigerator? Probably not, but maybe a 10-year one. But if you're thinking 10 years is going to cover everything, but a 5-year warranty actually covers everything, you may choose that warranty. So again, read the warranty and find out what it covers and what's important to you. If you want labor covered, because labor costs can be quite expensive, more expensive than parts usually when it comes to auto repairs, when you have something that's electronic and so forth, different types of repairs, it may be $150 to $100 an hour. And some of those warranties don't cover, the diagnosis part, which can be very expensive. So understanding exactly what it covers and what costs could be related to that warranty, so you can actually compare. So sometimes it takes a little bit of research. And so, I would ask you, what do you look for in a warranty, Lizette?
Yeah, obviously something that is reliable. Like in my case with the fridge, I would like something that at least 10 years, I think, plus minus. But yeah, thank you for that very insightful information. And yeah, I think that applies to a lot of people as well. So let's move to services. What if you paid a company, say for home renovation, and they close before completing the job? What do you do?
Well, a lot of times, for example, like that scenario that you provided, contractors and things, you should know whether or not they're licensed. The handyman down the road, more likely than not, is not going to be licensed. So you have less opportunity to try to hold them responsible. When there is an entity is licensed, then they usually have there's an authority that you can file a complaint with, and there may be a remedy through that authority. Here in Arizona, we have a register of contractors for licensed contractors. And you can look up to see if they're licensed. And and sometimes you'll see somebody who has a license number, but maybe a month before it got revoked. So doing that research about that particular contractor and looking online, because we have with the internet, we have availability of a lot of different what we call complaint boards, like the Better Business Bureau. Sometimes the Attorney General in different states will make complaints public. And then just like Yelp and everything, you got to take it with a grain of salt. If you start seeing complaints about not finishing the job and that sort of thing, what you see sometimes with contractors that are running into trouble is that they're accepting deposits and things and using that to pay a current job rather than actually using and reserving those funds for the job that it should be for. There's sometimes insurance, what we call insurance bonds, that are part of their license that they have to pay into, and then a consumer who has a complaint maybe can seek remedy against that insurance bond. But these are administrative procedures through the state. Getting someone to help you figure out exactly what your remedies are important. But if you want to spend the time and looking into things, then I would suggest doing that before you get into any kind of major renovation or expending a lot of money with a particular contractor.
Yeah, that's something I didn't even think about. So it's so easy to assume people are legit just because they're in business, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
And then what if a business closes and just disappears? Is there still some sort of legal action that you can take?
Well, sometimes they'll reinvent themselves, right? New name, and a new license because they've gotten into trouble. Maybe they've gotten into trouble in another jurisdiction, right? And you wouldn't know that because maybe they're, in a next door state and got in trouble and came back here. So having to do some kind of research on that. And then if they go somewhere else that, there's a legal term called successor liability. Because sometimes businesses, they just sell, right? They sell to another business. And so somebody buys them out, somebody retires and buys them out, but then they have a new name. So understanding whether that business is taking on those warranties, it's taking on those contracts is something that might need to be sussed out. And sometimes, the court will interpret that new company has done so, even though maybe they didn't intend to, or it wasn't actually part of, the conversation or the contracts. So finding out, if a business has reopened with a new name, or if their assets are sold or their contracts were sold to another business, again, these are things that aren't easy to discern, but not impossible. And so, yeah, I have with car dealerships, sometimes we'll see this where they were using a different name, and then, maybe one partner went and opened up another entity, and another partner opened up another entity, and then both of those entities really could be responsible if the prior entity owned the car and sold it to the consumer. So it can become a little complicated, but so the easiest answer is yes, but it's not always easy to determine that, and it can become a little bit difficult and take some time to figure out. And so it's always a good idea to go and see how long a company has been in business and to ask those types of questions, of the folks that you're dealing with, especially when it comes to used car dealerships.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you so much for the valuable information, Christine. Really, I think it's also important, to talk to a lawyer who can maybe help you assess the likelihood of recovery, when you're dealing with these type of things.
Yes.
Um, are there any final advice for consumers listening?
I always say just do your homework. Don't make rash decisions. Don't go on Facebook Marketplace and pay for something
Yeah.
that you're not sure of, and buying used things from these, Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, has risk. And you just have to appreciate that, those are the risks, that even though it might be less expensive and then, somebody, may not be truthful. And then the same thing goes for companies, sometimes you feel like you're dealing with a reputable company because they have a, big fancy website, or they have a big storefront. I can tell you, banks, insurance companies, big fancy stores, small businesses, everybody makes mistakes, and then everybody kind of cuts corners sometimes. So really, pay attention. Don't accept verbal statements. See what's on the paperwork, and if it's what they said isn't in the paperwork, ask for it to be added. You can always scribble things out and add things to contracts, as long as everybody signs it and acknowledges it. So don't think just because it's printed up that you can't change things and make it more clear, because a lot of times these little bitty writings and things that you can't really read, you really should take the time, because sometimes it has an arbitration clause in it that makes it so that you can't bring them to court, and maybe you can't sue for all the money that you've lost, because they're limiting the types of remedy that you have. So it really does, if you're making an investment, take the time to read the paperwork, or have somebody help you read it.
Yeah, and if something goes wrong, I think it's always important to speak to a legal professional early on. You may have
Yes.
more options than you think you have.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah, even a 15-minute consultation, it doesn't mean you have to hire a law firm. So often law firms, they have a lot of helpful information. We try to put helpful information on our website. So doing a little research on the legal topic, attorneys general for different states have a lot of consumer protection information. So, looking into things, and there's a lot of information that it's available out there now. Federal agencies, state agencies, helping consumers to understand their rights, and then what things to be wary of in certain sorts of situations when you're like purchasing a used car, the vehicle history, searching those, sussing those out. As I mentioned, going on the register of contractors, or whoever is a licensed entity in your state, to check to see if there's complaints, doing homework.
yeah, of course. Thank you so much, Christine, and thank you for everyone watching. Guys, if you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe for more legal tips that protect you and your family. See you guys next time.
Thank you, Lizette.